They told her she didn't look like she belonged in first class. They told her she needed to give up her seat for a VIP passenger. They even threatened to arrest her if she didn't move to the back of the plane. But what the flight attendant and the arrogant man in suit didn't know was that the woman they were humiliating wasn't just a passenger. She was Elara Vance, and she had signed the acquisition papers for the entire airline exactly 1 hour ago. This is the story of how a CEO was kicked out of her own plane and the brutal, instant karma that cost a racist passenger his career and a flight crew their jobs. You do not want to miss the ending. The air inside the cabin of Flight 409, bound from New York's JFK to London Heathrow, smelled of sanitized leather and expensive cologne. It was the specific scent of exclusivity. Elara Vance adjusted the lapel of her charcoal blazer, sinking into the plush embrace of seat 1A. She was exhausted. The last 72 hours had been a blur of boardrooms, high-stakes negotiations, and endless cups of lukewarm coffee in a skyscraper overlooking Manhattan. But it was done. The deal was closed. At 34 years old, Elara was a ghost in the corporate world. She wasn't the face you saw on magazine covers. She was the money behind the people on the covers. She was the CEO of Vantage Heavy Industries, a private equity firm that specialized in saving dying giants. And today, Vantage had quietly acquired a majority stake in Aerolux Airways. Technically, Elara owned the seat she was sitting in. Technically, she owned the rivets holding the fuselage together. But nobody on this plane knew that yet. The press release wasn't scheduled to drop until the markets opened on Monday morning. To the crew, she was just a name on a manifest. She closed her eyes, listening to the soft hum of the auxiliary power unit. She didn't look like a billionaire industrialist. She wore her hair in natural curls, pulled back into a practical bun. She wore no jewelry, aside from a simple, thin gold band on her thumb. She was black, young, and dressed in a comfortable, nondescript travel suit rather than flashy designer labels. "Champagne, Mom?" Elara opened one eye. A flight attendant with a tight smile and a name tag reading Brenda was hovering over her. "Just sparkling water, please. No ice," Elara said softly. Brenda's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, her eyes scanning Elara up and down, lingering on her sneakers. "Right away," she said, her tone professional but clipped. She turned away quickly to attend to a man settling into seat 1F across the aisle. Elara ignored the microaggression. She was used to it. She pulled her tablet out of her bag to review the final transition documents. She just wanted to sleep. She had paid full fare for this seat, nearly $12,000, specifically for the privacy. The piece lasted exactly 4 minutes. A commotion at the front of the aircraft made Elara look up. A man was standing in the galley, arguing loudly with the purser. He was tall, dressed in a bespoke navy suit that screamed Savile Row, with salt and pepper hair slicked back aggressively. He carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than a mid-sized sedan. This was Preston Thorne. Elara recognized him instantly, though he had no idea who she was. Thorne was a senior partner at Sterling & Cooper, a rival investment firm. He was notorious in the industry, brilliant, ruthless, and famously intolerant. He was the kind of man who thought the world existed to serve him, and usually he was right. "I don't care what the computer says," Preston barked, his voice carrying through the hush of the first-class cabin. "I specifically requested seat 1A. I always fly 1A. It's my lucky seat. I have a merger in London that depends on my mindset, and I am not sitting in the second row like some mid-level manager." The purser, a younger man named David, looked terrified. "Mr. Thorne, I understand, but the flight is fully booked. Seat 1A was purchased days ago. We can put you in 1F, which is just across." "1F is on the aisle," Preston spat. "I want the window. I want the privacy. Who is in 1A? Preston pushed past David, storming into the cabin, his eyes locked onto Ilara. For a moment, there was silence. Preston stared at her, his face twisting into a sneer of genuine confusion mixed with distaste. He didn't see a CEO. He didn't see a paying customer. He saw an obstacle that, in his worldview, shouldn't exist in his space. He turned back to the flight attendant, Brenda, who had rushed over to join the fray. "Is this a joke?" Preston asked, gesturing loosely at Ilara. "You've got crew sitting in first class, while a Platinum Diamond member is being shuffled around?" Ilara felt the temperature in her blood rise, but she kept her face impassive. She placed her tablet down on the tray table with a deliberate, soft click. "I am not crew," Ilara said, her voice calm, deep and steady. "I'm a passenger, and I believe you're standing in my personal space." Preston laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Passenger? Look, sweetheart, I don't know who you slept with or what lottery you won to get an upgrade, but you're in my seat. I fly this route every week. The crew knows me." He turned his charm on Brenda. "Brenda, darling, tell her. There's clearly been a mix-up. I booked this flight through my corporate account. There's no way the system assigned me 1B and put her in 1A. Brenda looked between the two of them. On one side, Preston Thorne, white, wealthy, a known frequent flyer who likely tipped well and complained to corporate if his champagne wasn't chilled to exactly 4 degrees. On the other side, Ilara, a young black woman in sneakers, reading a tablet, looking like she might be a student or a musician on a lucky break. Brenda made her choice instantly. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Thorne," Brenda cooed. She turned to Ilara, her smile gone, replaced by a stern, school mom expression. "Mom, I'm going to need to see your boarding pass." "I showed it to the gate agent," Ilara said, not moving. "And I showed it to the attendant at the door." "I need to see it again," Brenda said, her voice rising so the other passengers could hear. "We have a double booking situation, and priority goes to our Diamond members." Ilara slowly reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and displayed the digital boarding pass. Ilara Vance. Seat 1A, fare class. F, full fare. Brenda squinted at the screen, tapping her chin. She wasn't looking for confirmation. She was looking for a loophole. "I see," Brenda said. "Well, it looks like you booked this through a third-party aggregator." "I booked it directly through the airline's concierge," Ilara corrected her. "Regardless," Brenda interrupted, straightening up. "Mr. Thorne is a priority partner with Aerolux. When there is a conflict regarding seat assignment, our policy states we must accommodate our highest-tier loyalty members first." "That is not the policy," Ilara said, her eyes sharpening. "The policy is that a confirmed check-in booking takes precedence unless the passenger is a security threat." "Are you calling me a security threat, Brenda?" Preston groaned, checking his Rolex. "Oh God, here we go. Don't make this a civil rights march, lady. Just take the free drinks and move back to row 10, or wherever they have space. I have work to do." "I'm not moving," Ilara said. She picked up her tablet again. "I have work to do as well." Preston slammed his hand onto the overhead bin, making the entire cabin jump. "I am not flying in 1B. Brenda, get the captain, or get security. I don't care. Get this woman out of my seat." Brenda nodded, her face hardening. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one last time to voluntarily swap seats with Mr. Thorne. If you refuse, I will have to classify this as a disturbance." Ilara looked Brenda dead in the eyes. She saw the fear behind the flight attendant's arrogance. Brenda was afraid of the angry white man in the suit, but she felt safe bullying the quiet black woman. It was a calculation Brenda had made 1,000 times before. Go get the captain, Ilara said softly. I'd love to speak to him. Brenda scoffed. Fine. She turned on her heel and marched toward the cockpit. Preston leaned down, bringing his face uncomfortably close to Ilara's. You're making a big mistake, he whispered, his breath smelling of mints and aggression. You think playing tough works here? In the real world, money talks, and you clearly don't have enough of it to be this stubborn. Ilara didn't blink. Mr. Thorne, in about 5 minutes, you're going to wish you had just sat in seat 1B. The cockpit door opened, and Captain James Sterling emerged. He was a veteran pilot, greying at the temples, with the weary look of a man who just wanted to fly the plane, not referee a kindergarten fight. However, the report Brenda had given him, belligerent passenger refusing crew instructions, required his intervention. Brenda trailed behind him, looking vindicated. She's right there, Captain. She's refusing to cooperate and being aggressive toward Mr. Thorne. Captain Sterling adjusted his cap and approached seat 1A. He saw Preston Thorne standing in the aisle, looking exasperated, and Ilara sitting calmly. Problem here, folks? Captain Sterling asked, his voice booming. Captain Sterling, Preston exclaimed, as if greeting an old friend. Good to see you again. Look, we have a bit of a situation. This young lady is in my seat. Brenda tried to explain the Diamond Protocol to her, but she's being difficult. Sterling looked at Ilara. He saw a composed woman who didn't look like the belligerent person Brenda had described. But he also knew Preston Thorne. Thorne's firm had contracts with the airline. He was a VIP. Ma'am, Sterling said, trying to be diplomatic. Mr. Thorne is a frequent flyer with us. Usually, when there's a double booking, there is no double booking, Captain, Ilara cut in, her voice polite but firm. I have a confirmed ticket. I am seated. I am not intoxicated. I am not shouting. The only disturbance here is this man demanding a seat he didn't book. Sterling paused. She was articulate. Too articulate. But the pressure was on. The ground crew needed to close the doors in 10 minutes to make their slot. A delay would cost the airline thousands in fines. The path of least resistance was to move the person who didn't look like they could get the pilot fired. Ma'am, Sterling sighed. I understand your frustration, but the lead flight attendant has authority over cabin arrangement. If she has determined that for the safety and harmony of the flight, a seat swap is necessary, you have to comply. It's a federal offense to disobey a crew member's instruction. Safety and harmony? Ilara repeated, raising an eyebrow. Is my sitting here a threat to the safety of the aircraft? Your refusal to move is causing a scene, Brenda interjected sharply, and we have other passengers to board. We cannot have this drama. Ilara looked around. The other first-class passengers were watching with rapt attention. A couple in 2A and 2B were whispering. A man in 3A was filming with his phone. I see, Ilara said. So because Mr. Thorne is throwing a tantrum, I am the one causing a scene. Listen to me, Preston snapped, leaning over the captain's shoulder. I make one phone call to the CEO of Aerolux, and you won't just be off this flight. You'll be on the no-fly list. Do you know who I am? I manage assets worth more than your entire neighborhood. Ilara almost smiled. If you only knew, she thought. The CEO isn't taking calls right now. She's busy dealing with you. Captain? Ilara said, shifting her gaze back to the pilot. I am asking you, as the ultimate authority on this vessel, to enforce the rules of carriage. I have a valid ticket. I am in my assigned seat. Are you ordering me to vacate this seat solely to appease this man? Sterling looked uncomfortable. He looked at Brenda, who was nodding vigorously. He looked at Preston, who was tapping his foot. I am ordering you to follow the crew's instructions so we can depart, Sterling said, choosing the bureaucratic answer. We have a seat available in premium economy. We will refund the difference in your ticket price and give you a travel voucher. But you need to move. Now." "Premium economy?" Ilara asked. "You want to move me from first class, which I paid full fare for, to economy? Why not move Mr. Thorne?" "I don't sit in the back," Preston scoffed, "and I certainly don't sit in 1B. "This is your last warning," Brenda said, crossing her arms. "I have airport police on speed dial at the jet bridge. If you don't grab your bag and move to row 24 right now, I will have you forcibly removed." The ultimatum hung in the air. Ilara's mind raced. She could pull the "Do you know who I am" card right now. She could show them the acquisition email. She could end this in 10 seconds. But that wouldn't be enough. If she revealed herself now, they would apologize. They would grovel. Preston would probably try to buy her a drink. Brenda would say she was just following protocol. They would learn nothing. They would just be afraid of her power. She wanted them to feel the weight of their actions. She wanted to see how far they would go when they thought she was powerless. She wanted to expose the rot in the system she had just bought. Ilara stood up. She was tall, almost eye level with Preston. She smoothed her blazer. "Fine," Ilara said. Her voice was icy. "I will not be moving to row 24. If you are denying me the service I paid for, I will deplane. But know this. You are making a decision right now that you cannot undo." Yeah, save the drama for your blog," Preston laughed, stepping aside to let her out. He immediately threw his briefcase onto seat 1A before she had even fully stepped into the aisle. Finally, someone with some sense. Brenda smirked. "I'll have the gate agent retrieve your checked luggage. You can discuss a refund with the desk." Ilara stepped into the aisle. She looked at Captain Sterling. "Captain, I hope you log this incident accurately in your flight report. For your sake." Sterling frowned, a flicker of doubt crossing his eyes. There was something about her demeanor, too calm, too controlled, that unsettled him. But the door was closing. The schedule was king. "Just have a safe evening, ma'am," Sterling mumbled, turning back to the cockpit. Ilara grabbed her carry-on. As she walked toward the cabin door, she passed the man in 3A who was filming. She looked directly into the camera lens and gave a small, confident nod. She walked off the plane, down the jet bridge, and back into the terminal. As soon as she was clear of the gate agents, who looked at her with pity, Ilara stopped. She didn't go to the refund desk. She didn't call a taxi. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number that very few people in the world had. "This is Reynolds," a gruff voice answered on the first ring. It was the head of global security for Vantage Heavy Industries. "Reynolds, it's Ilara," she said, watching the Aerolux plane through the terminal window. "I need you to execute protocol clean sweep, immediately." "Ma'am?" Reynolds sounded surprised. That's usually reserved for hostile takeovers. "This is a hostile takeover," Ilara said, her eyes fixed on the plane where Preston Thorne was currently sipping champagne in her seat. "I'm at JFK, gate B42, flight 409. I want that plane held on the tarmac. Do not let it take off. And get the legal team on a conference call. I'm firing the crew." "Held on the tarmac? On what authority?" "On the authority of the owner," Ilara said. "Call the tower. Tell them the CEO of Aerolux is on the ground and has flagged the aircraft for a critical personnel violation." "And Reynolds?" "Yes, Ms. Vance?" "Send the car around. I'm not done with Flight 409 yet." Inside the cockpit of Flight 409, Captain James Sterling felt the familiar, reassuring vibration of the twin GE90 engines spooling up. He went through the pre-flight checklist with his first officer, a younger man named Daniels who was visibly nervous after the scene in the cabin. Door 1L closed and armed. Daniels read off the display. Parking brake released. Tugs are engaged. Sterling exhaled. Let's get out of here. We're already 12 minutes behind schedule because of that nonsense. He keyed the mic. Kennedy ground, Aerolux 409, requesting pushback from gate B42. The radio crackled. Aerolux 409, pushback approved. Face east, monitor tower on 119.1. The aircraft shuddered as the tug began to push the massive metal bird away from the terminal. Back in the cabin, the fasten seatbelt sign chimed. In seat 1A, Preston Thorne stretched his legs. He felt fantastic. He had won. The champagne in his glass was crisp, chilled to perfection. He watched the terminal building recede through the window, a smug grin plastered on his face. He pulled out his phone to text his business partner. Had a little issue with a stowaway in my seat. Handled it. We're wheels up in 10. Brenda walked by, checking seatbelts. She paused at 1A, leaning in conspiratorially. Is everything to your liking now, Mr. Thorne? Perfect, Brenda. Just perfect. Preston beamed. You handled that beautifully. I'll be sure to mention your name in my feedback letter. Your management material. Brenda blushed, her ego swelling. Thank you, sir. We just want to ensure our VIPs are comfortable. The plane turned, the nose pointing toward the taxiway. The engines whined, ready to provide thrust. And then, abruptly, the plane stopped. It wasn't a soft brake. It was a hard, jarring halt that made the champagne in Preston's glass slosh over the rim onto his expensive trousers. What the hell? Preston muttered, dabbing at the spill. In the cockpit, Captain Sterling frowned. He hadn't touched the brakes. He looked at Daniels. Did you hit the brake? No, sir, Daniels said, looking at the instruments. The tug stopped. Suddenly the radio exploded with noise. The calm, robotic voice of the air traffic controller was replaced by an urgent, human tone. Aerolux 409. Kennedy ground. Stop immediately. Cancel pushback clearance. Do not, I repeat, do not start taxi. Sterling's heart skipped a beat. A command that urgent usually meant a security threat. A bomb, a fugitive, a fire. Kennedy ground. Aerolux 409 holding position. Sterling replied, his voice tight. What's the problem? We are clear of the ramp. There was a pause. A long, static-filled silence that felt like an eternity. Aerolux 409, we have a Level 1 corporate halt order issued for your aircraft. You are ordered to return to the gate immediately. Engines off. Do not open doors until authorized by ground security. Sterling blinked. A corporate halt order? I've been flying for 20 years. I've never heard of that. Who issued it? The order comes from the OCC, Operations Control Center, with a priority code Red Alpha. It was flagged directly by the ownership group. Return to gate B42 immediately. Sterling looked at Daniels. Daniels looked pale. Ownership group? You mean the board? I don't know, Sterling snapped. Just tell the tug to pull us back in. He keyed the PA system. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Sterling. We have a minor technical discrepancy regarding our paperwork. ATC has asked us to return to the gate to sort it out. Ideally, this shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Please remain seated. A collective groan went through the plane. In seat 1A, Preston Thorne slammed his glass down on the tray. You have got to be kidding me! A paperwork error? He flagged Brenda down as she hurried past. What is going on? I have a meeting in London at 9:00 a.m. sharp. I don't know, Mr. Thorne, Brenda said, her voice trembling slightly. The captain says we have to go back. While the confusion spread through the cabin, Elara Vance was standing in the terminal, watching the plane being dragged back toward her. She was no longer alone. Surrounding her was a small army. To her left was Arthur Pendleton, the chief legal officer for Aerolux. who had been halfway through a dinner in Manhattan when Ilara summoned him. He was still wearing a tuxedo, looking out of breath and terrified. To her right was Marcus Cole, the station manager for JFK, a man whose job depended on the smooth operation of this hub. And behind them were 4 Port Authority police officers and 2 men in dark suits, Reynolds's private security team. "Miss Vance," Marcus Cole said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The plane is redocking. The jet bridge is being extended. But are you sure you want to do this? Grounding a transatlantic flight costs the airline roughly $50,000 an hour. The PR fallout." Ilara didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the cockpit windows of the approaching Boeing 777. "Marcus," she said, her voice calm and deadly, "I just bought this airline for $4 billion. Do you think I care about $50,000? Marcus swallowed hard. "No, Mum." "The culture of a company starts at the top," Ilara continued, adjusting her cuffs, "and it filters down to the bottom. If the crew on that plane thinks it is acceptable to humiliate a passenger based on appearance, it means the leadership has failed. I am the leadership now, and I am fixing the failure." Arthur, the lawyer, stepped forward. "Ilara, legally, we are on solid ground. The transfer of ownership was finalized at 5 p.m. EST. You are the chairman of the board. You have the right to suspend operations on any vessel for personnel reviews. But firing the crew mid-trip? We'll have union grievances." "Let them grieve," Ilara said. "I want the grievance. I want it on public record. I want every employee in this company to know exactly why Captain Sterling and Brenda lost their jobs tonight." The plane shuddered as it locked back into the gate. The engines spooled down, the whine dying into a low hum. "Let's go," Ilara said. She walked toward the jet bridge door. The gate agent, the one who had looked at her with pity earlier, now looked at her with wide-eyed awe. The agent quickly typed a code, opening the door for Ilara and her entourage. Ilara walked down the narrow, sloping tunnel of the jet bridge. The smell of jet fuel was stronger here. She could hear the muffled sounds of the airport outside, but her focus was singular. She wasn't just Ilara Vance, the passenger, anymore. She was the executioner. On board Flight 409, the atmosphere was toxic. The passengers in economy were grumbling, babies were crying, and the air conditioning had been turned off during the power switchover, making the cabin stuffy. In first class, Preston Thorne was on his phone, screaming at his assistant. "I don't care! Get me on the British Airways flight! This airline is a joke! They dragged us back to the gate for paperwork. I'm going to sue them for every penny of my ticket." Brenda was in the galley, whispering frantically to David, the purser. "Do you think it's the woman? The one we kicked off?" David shook his head. "Don't be stupid, Brenda. She was nobody. Probably just some glitch in the weight and balance system." "She said something," Brenda insisted, gnawing on her fingernail. "She said, 'You're making a decision you can't undo.' She was so calm." "Crazy people are always calm," David dismissed. Just then, the main cabin door, 1L, was knocked on from the outside, a heavy, authoritative knock. David unlocked the latch and swung the door open, expecting the ground mechanics or a paperwork runner. Instead, he found himself face to chest with a large man in a dark suit with an earpiece. The man stepped aside, and Marcus Cole, the station manager, entered. David straightened up. "Mr. Cole, we weren't expecting—" Marcus ignored him. He stepped to the side, looking terrified. "Make way," he whispered harshly. And then Ilara Vance walked back onto the plane. She walked slowly. Her sneakers made no sound on the galley floor. She didn't look at David. She didn't look at Brenda. She walked straight into the first-class aisle. Behind her, Arthur Pendleton, the lawyer, and 2 police officers followed. The cabin went silent. The passengers recognized her immediately. The woman who had been kicked off 20 minutes ago was back. But something was different. She wasn't holding her luggage. She wasn't pleading. She was walking with the kind of energy that sucked the air out of the room. Elara stopped at row 1. Preston Thorne looked up from his phone. His jaw dropped. He actually laughed, a sound of pure disbelief. "You have got to be kidding me," Preston said, looking around for an audience. "They brought the plane back for you? What did you do? Pull the race card so hard the tower panicked?" He stood up, towering over her again. "Listen, lady, I don't know who you know, but this is harassment. I am a VIP. Mr. Thorne," Elara said. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the silent cabin, it sounded like a thunderclap. "Please sit down." "I will not sit down. I want this woman removed," Preston shouted, looking at the police officers behind her. "Officers, arrest her. She is trespassing." One of the police officers stepped forward. "Sir, sit down, now." Preston froze. The officer wasn't looking at Elara. He was looking at Preston. "What?" Preston stammered. "Sit down." Preston sank slowly into seat 1A, confusion clouding his angry face. Elara turned to the galley where Brenda and David were huddled, looking pale. Captain Sterling had just emerged from the cockpit, buttoning his jacket, looking annoyed. "What is going on here?" Sterling demanded. He saw Marcus Cole. "Marcus, why is she back on my plane?" Marcus Cole couldn't meet the captain's eyes. He looked at the floor. "Captain, this isn't your plane." Sterling scoffed. "What are you talking about?" Elara turned to face the captain. She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a boarding pass this time. It was a notarized executive order. "Captain Sterling," Elara said. "My name is Elara Vance. Does that name ring a bell?" Sterling frowned, thinking. "Vance? No." "Maybe you've heard of Vantage Heavy Industries?" she asked. Sterling's face went white. Every pilot knew Vantage. They were the private equity sharks that had been rumored to be circling the airline for months. "Vantage," Sterling whispered. They finalized the deal?" "An hour ago," Elara said. "I am the CEO of Vantage Heavy Industries, and as of 5 p.m. today, I am the owner and chairwoman of Aerolux Airways." The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear the ice melting in Preston Thorne's glass. Brenda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes went wide, darting from Elara to the floor. Elara turned her gaze to Brenda. "You told me I didn't look like I belonged in first class, Brenda. You told me I needed to move to accommodate a VIP. Elara gestured to the empty seat in 1B. "It seems you were confused about who the VIP on this flight actually was." Brenda started to shake. "Ms. Vance, I didn't know. The system—" Mr. Thorne said. "I don't care what Mr. Thorne said," Elara cut her off. "You are the lead flight attendant. Your job is to ensure the safety and dignity of all passengers. Instead, you acted as a personal servant to a bully, because he looked like money and I didn't." Elara turned back to Captain Sterling. "And you, Captain, you had a chance to investigate. You had a chance to ask for my side. Instead, you took the easy way out. You threatened me with arrest to keep your schedule." "Ms. Vance," Sterling stammered, his authoritative pilot voice gone, replaced by the shaky tone of a man watching his pension evaporate. "I was following protocol for a passenger disturbance. I had no way of knowing." "That's the problem, Captain," Elara said softly. "You shouldn't need to know I'm the CEO to treat me with basic respect. If I were a student or a grandmother or a janitor, I paid for this seat, and you threw me out of it." Elara turned to Arthur, her lawyer. "Arthur, please read the decree." Arthur cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. He looked incredibly uncomfortable but spoke clearly. Captain James Sterling, lead flight attendant Brenda Miller, and purser David Halloway. Pursuant to Article 14 of the Aerolux employment contract regarding gross misconduct and reputational damage, you are hereby relieved of duty effective immediately. You are to collect your personal effects and deplane. Your security credentials are revoked. Brenda burst into tears. No, please, I have a mortgage. Miss Vance, please. Sterling stood rigid, his face turning a deep shade of red. You can't do this. I have a union rep. This is wrongful termination. You can take it up with HR on Monday, Ilara said dismissively. Right now, get off my plane. The 3 crew members stood frozen. Officers, Ilara said. The police officers stepped forward. Let's go, folks, don't make us drag you out. The walk of shame was excruciating. Brenda was sobbing loudly as she grabbed her purse from the galley. Sterling grabbed his flight bag, his head hung low, refusing to look at the passengers he had captained just minutes ago. As they were escorted off the plane and into the jet bridge, the cabin remained silent. But the show wasn't over. Ilara turned slowly toward seat 1A. Preston Thorne was pressing himself into the corner of the seat, trying to make himself invisible. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing from the cookie jar. Ilara leaned one hand on the overhead bin, leaning down so her face was level with his. Now, she whispered, about my seat. The silence in the first-class cabin was heavy, the kind of silence that usually precedes a natural disaster. Preston Thorne, a man who had spent his entire life failing upwards, was currently shrinking into the Italian leather of seat 1A. Ilara Vance stood over him, her expression unreadable. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked bored. It was the look a parent gives a toddler who has just drawn on the walls with a permanent marker. Well, Ilara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I believe you said something earlier. Something about money talking? Preston swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed visibly. The arrogance was draining out of him, replaced by a frantic, animalistic panic. He looked at the police officers standing behind Ilara, then at Arthur Pendleton, the company lawyer who was holding a tablet like a weapon. Look, Preston stammered, his voice cracking. Ms. Vance, right? I didn't know. Obviously, if I had known you were the owner. If you had known I was powerful, you would have treated me with respect, Ilara corrected him. But because you thought I was nobody, you treated me like trash. That is the measure of a man, Mr. Thorne. And you have been measured. Preston tried a different tactic. He forced a smile, reaching into his jacket pocket. We got off on the wrong foot. I'm under a lot of stress. Big merger in London. Sterling and Cooper is handling the Vanguard acquisition. It's a $10 billion deal. I'm just on edge. He pulled out a platinum credit card. Let me make this right. I'll pay for your seat. Hell, I'll pay for everyone's seat in first class. Just, let's forget this, okay? I need to be in London. Ilara looked at the credit card. She didn't take it. She just laughed, a soft, dry sound. You think you can buy me off? Ilara asked. Mr. Thorne, I just spent $4 billion cash to acquire this airline. Your credit limit wouldn't cover the fuel required to taxi to the runway. She turned to Arthur. Arthur, what is the status of Mr. Thorne's ticket? Arthur tapped on his tablet. According to the system, Mr. Thorne's ticket has been voided effective 2 minutes ago. The refund has been processed to his original form of payment, minus a restocking fee. Voided? Preston shrieked, standing up again. You can't void my ticket. I have a contract of carriage. Actually, Arthur said, looking over his glasses, Section 9, Paragraph C of the Aerolux Terms of Service states that the airline reserves the right to refuse transport to any passenger who exhibits abusive behavior toward crew or other passengers, or whose conduct creates a hazard to the safety or comfort of others. We have 3 witness statements, including the video from the gentleman in seat 3A, confirming you were abusive. I was not abusive. I just wanted my seat, Preston yelled, spit flying from his mouth. And now you have no seat, Ilara said. Officers? The police officers stepped forward again. Sir, you need to grab your bags. Preston looked around the cabin, desperate for an ally. This is insane. You're all witnessing this. She's abusing her power. She's kicking me off because of a personal vendetta. The passengers stared back at him. The couple in 2A and 2B looked away. The man in 3A held his phone up higher, capturing every second of the meltdown. Nobody spoke up for Preston Thorne. He had alienated them the moment he opened his mouth 40 minutes ago. I'm not moving, Preston hissed, gripping the armrests. You'll have to drag me. Ilara sighed. She checked her watch. Reynolds, she said to the head of security, who was standing by the door. Yes, ma'am? Ban him. The 2 words hung in the air. Preston froze. Ban me? From this flight? From the airline, Ilara said calmly. And since Aerolux is part of the Skyward Global Alliance, I'm triggering the reciprocal unruly passenger protocol. By the time you get back to the terminal, you won't just be banned from Aerolux. You'll be banned from British Airways, Delta, Air France, and KLM. Preston's face went the color of ash. A ban like that wasn't just an inconvenience. For a man in international finance, it was a career death sentence. He couldn't do his job if he couldn't fly. You can't do that, he whispered. I just did, Ilara said. Arthur, log it. Logged, Arthur confirmed. The notification has been pushed to the global server. Ilara stepped closer, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly low register. You wanted to be a VIP, Preston? Now you're a VIP, a very impossible passenger. You have 5 seconds to walk off this plane with some dignity, or these officers will put you in zip ties and drag you down the aisle like a sack of unwanted luggage. Your choice. Preston looked at Ilara's eyes. He saw no hesitation. He saw the iron will that had made her a billionaire in a Shark Tank industry. He realized, finally, that he had lost. With a trembling hand, he grabbed his briefcase. He stood up, his legs shaky. He didn't look at Ilara. He didn't look at the passengers. He kept his eyes on the floor. This isn't over, he muttered as he squeezed past her. My lawyers will destroy you. Your lawyers work for Sterling and Cooper, Ilara replied. I suggest you check who owns the majority share of your firm's parent company before you make that call. Preston stopped. He turned his head slowly. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Vantage Heavy Industries. They bought everything. They probably owned the debt on his firm's building. He didn't say another word. He walked quickly toward the exit, his head down, a broken man in a $5,000 suit. As he stepped onto the jet bridge, escaping the gaze of the cabin, the man in seat 3A started clapping. It started slow, a single clap. Then the woman in 2B joined in. Then the economy cabin, who had been listening through the curtains, started cheering. Within seconds, the entire plane was erupting in applause. Ilara didn't smile. She just took a deep breath, exhaling the tension of the last hour. She turned to the empty seat 1A. Arthur, she said, get a cleaning crew in here. I want this seat wiped down before I sit in it. The turnaround was a miracle of logistics. Within 15 minutes of Preston Thorne's departure, a new flight crew boarded. They were hand-picked by the chief pilot, who had been woken up at home by a frantic call from operations. The new captain, a woman named Sarah Jenkins, walked onto the plane with an air of professional calm that immediately settled the jittery passengers. The cleaning crew did a sweep of seat 1A. Ilara stood in the galley, refusing to sit until the plane was ready. She turned to the passengers in first class. The applause had died down, replaced by a curious, respectful silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ilara said, her voice projecting clearly without a microphone, "I apologize for the delay and the disruption. What you witnessed earlier was not the standard of Aerolux, and it is certainly not the standard I will accept as the new owner." She paused, making eye contact with the man in 3A who was still holding his phone. "To compensate you for your patience," Ilara continued, "everyone on board this flight, economy included, will be receiving a voucher for a future round-trip ticket anywhere we fly. And for the remainder of this flight, the bar is open. Complimentary top-shelf service for the entire plane." A cheer went up from the back of the plane that shook the overhead bins. Ilara nodded and finally, sat down in Seat 1A. It was just a seat. It was leather and foam and metal, but as she buckled the belt, it felt like a throne. She watched out the window as the jet bridge retracted. The tug pushed them back, for real this time. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Ilara pulled out her phone. She had one last email to send before they lost signal. She opened her secure mail app and composed a message to the board of directors of Sterling and Cooper. Subject: regarding Preston Thorne. London merger body. Gentlemen, I am currently en route to London to review the Vanguard acquisition personally. I encountered one of your partners, Preston Thorne, regarding a logistics matter. I found his judgment to be severely lacking. If he is the lead on the Vanguard deal, I am pulling Vantage's financing. I suggest you find a new lead by the time I land. E. Vance. She hit send just as the engines roared to full power. The G-force pushed her back into the seat, her seat. Meanwhile, inside the terminal, Preston Thorne was living a nightmare. He was standing near the baggage claim, waiting for his checked luggage to be spit out onto the carousel. He was alone. The airport police had escorted him to the public area and left him there with a warning to leave the premises immediately. He pulled out his phone to call his assistant to book a private jet. He had to get to London. If he missed the meeting, he was finished. But when he looked at his screen, he saw he had 52 missed notifications. Twitter, X, was blowing up. TikTok was vibrating. He opened the first link sent to him by a colleague with the caption, "Dude, is this you?" It was a video titled, "Racist VIP tries to kick black woman out of first class, finds out she owns the airline." The video had been uploaded 20 minutes ago. It already had 400,000 views. In the video, Preston looked deranged. The angle from seat 3A was perfect. It showed him sneering, "Do you know who I am?" It showed him throwing his back. And then it showed the glorious moment where Ilara Vance, cool as ice, revealed her identity. The comments were brutal. "This guy is toast. Imagine telling your boss to move to coach, LOL. Name is Preston Thorne, works for Sterling and Cooper. Internet, do your thing." Preston felt bile rise in his throat. No. His phone rang. It wasn't his assistant. It was the managing partner of Sterling and Cooper, the big boss, the man who had mentored Preston for 10 years. Preston answered, his hand shaking. "Sir, I can explain. There was a misunderstanding." "Shut up, Preston." The voice on the other end was cold steel. "I just got an email from Ilara Vance, and I just saw a video that is currently trending #1 worldwide. It's taken out of context," Preston cried. "She set me up. Ilara Vance is the majority financing partner on our London deal," the boss shouted. She just threatened to pull the plug if you are involved. Do you know what that means? It means you just cost this firm $10 billion because you wanted a window seat. I can fix it. I'll fly commercial to... You're not going anywhere, the boss cut him off. Don't bother coming to the London office. Don't bother coming to the New York office. Your access pass is deactivated. We are issuing a press release in 10 minutes, distancing ourselves from your behavior. You're fired, Preston. For cause. No severance. No golden parachute. You can't do that, Preston screamed, drawing looks from people waiting at the baggage claim. It's done. And Preston, good luck finding a flight home. The line went dead. Preston lowered the phone. He stood in the middle of the arrivals hall, surrounded by families hugging and travelers rushing to their destinations. He looked up at the departure board. Flight 409 to London. Departed. He looked at his reflection in the glass doors. He looked old. He looked tired. And for the first time in his life, he looked completely powerless. A security guard walked up to him. "Sir, you can't loiter here. You need to move." Preston looked at the guard. He wanted to scream, "Do you know who I am?" But he knew the answer. Nobody. Flight 409 touched down at Heathrow Airport under a grey London morning sky. But for Ilara Vance, the future had never looked brighter. As the plane taxied to the gate, the atmosphere on board was transformed. The new crew treated her with a level of respect that bordered on reverence. Not out of fear, but out of genuine admiration for how she had defended the dignity of the cabin. Ilara didn't wait for the general disembarkation. A private car was waiting for her on the tarmac, arranged by her London team. As she stepped off the plane, the cool English air felt like victory. She checked her phone in the back of the town car. The stock price of Aerolux Airways had actually jumped 4% overnight. The news of the active CEO who stood up against entitlement had gone viral, turning a potential PR disaster into a branding triumph. The public didn't see a chaotic airline. They saw a company led by someone with a backbone. Later that afternoon, in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the River Thames, Ilara sat at the head of a long mahogany table. Across from her sat the new delegation from Sterling and Cooper. They looked nervous, sweating in their suits, eager to please. Preston Thorne was nowhere to be seen. On a muted television screen in the corner of the boardroom, a news ticker flashed a headline. "Viral meltdown. Investment banker. Fired after mid-air rant. Facing federal investigation." Ilara watched the screen for a brief second, her face impassive. She took a sip of sparkling water, no ice, and turned her attention back to the trembling executives across from her. "Shall we begin?" Ilara asked, uncapping her pen. She had claimed her seat at the table, and she had cleaned house. Preston Thorne had learned the hard way that true power doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just needs to sign the check. And that is the incredible story of how one arrogant mistake cost a man his entire career. It serves as a powerful reminder that you never truly know who you are talking to, and that treating people with basic dignity shouldn't depend on their net worth or what they are wearing. Ilara Vance didn't just win her seat back. She exposed the rot in the system and proved that money cannot buy class. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes drama and instant karma, please smash that like button right now. It really helps the channel grow and tells YouTube to show this video to more people. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. I have another crazy story coming next week about a landlord who tried to evict a tenant, only to find out the tenant secretly owned the building. You do not want to miss that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.